And welcome to the Cloud Counsel. I'm Andrew Brinded, and the purpose of the Cloud Counsel is to deliver actionable insights during COVID-19. This is targeted at business, IT, and also relating to the subject of cloud computing. We're live today and live every week at Thursday at 4 p.m. GMT. You can also email questions to the panel today. Please email advice@thecloudcouncil.com. That's advice@thecloudcouncil.com. So today's discussion is about how to deliver major change on business process in light of COVID-19. And I'm very pleased to be joined by, firstly, Louise McCarthy, Business Transformation Director, non-executive at Recognise Financial Services, a tech leader, 35 years experience at Aviva, Belron and HMRC. Hello, Louise. How are you doing?
Hi, Andrew. Thank you very much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this debate today.
Great to have you, Louise, with us today. And I'm also joined by Mark Aikman, Business Transformation Consultant at Ignition Transformation. Mark's managed and leadership roles at complex IT projects at Cadbury, BP, T-Mobile, and more recently at Upfield. Hello, Mark. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm good. Thanks, Andrew.
Okay, let's move to the big question. So the big question for today is how to tackle business transformation during COVID-19. So my children have been, are in the teens, pre-Easter. They were obviously sent home. They were trying to study at home and the service from the school was frankly not very good. Then during Easter holidays, we got emails about Google Meet, about new ways that they would be studying, about the fact that they had to be wearing certain dress code, turning up a certain day, about child protection policies and all this sort of thing. And I was amazed at how quickly the school had pivoted to a home environment and having that education. But Mark, when I look at IT generally being sluggish at this sort of thing in the past, business transformation takes ages. You're advising CIOs all the time. How are they going to learn to do business process transformation and not be sluggish and adapt quickly?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I think the current situation is a great accelerant of what is potentially possible. And you're talking about education, how they responded. I think you've seen in the industry, different industries, a wholesale change to how they respond to doing business. Obviously, a number of businesses are struggling to do any business whatsoever. I think there's a big diversification between those businesses struggling and those businesses who have huge demand. Obviously food production, supermarkets, etc. But I think going back to the original question, I think CIOs, it's a fantastic opportunity for a CIO. Why wouldn't you want to do it? Now, obviously, I'm biased. I would say that I've been doing it for a number of years, but I think it's a fantastic opportunity for a CIO to broaden their experience and also broaden their stakeholder management within whatever company they're working for, and also to build key relationships with the C-suite and their board, and to get a much fuller understanding of how their business operates.
Okay, but how do they do it, Mark? How are they going to adapt if these are CIOs who are used to doing application change over a period of time, and now they got to do it at pace? How are they going to do that?
Yeah, I think it's a mindset as much as a execution piece. I think a lot of CIOs need to look at what their priorities are, and look at what they're currently looking at. Again, for me, IT's always been about the problem statement, and I think for me we need to move into the opportunity statement and how CIOs can make a big difference to the bottom line of companies and utilize the modern day tech, which can make massive accelerants in their business.
Okay, and Louise, when we look at the different types of companies at the moment that are facing different challenges, you've got, on the one hand, fast growth companies that are benefiting somewhat during this period, like delivery companies. And then on the other hand, you've got companies under significant pressure, like travel companies. What would be your advice to them in terms of the different ends of the spectrum and how they adapt to business change?
And I think over the years, I've undertaken a number of transformations in various industries, as I mentioned, HMRC, Aviva, and Belron, and they range from banking sectors to the service industry. But what I would say in terms of transformation and things I have in my kit bag in terms of transformation, in terms of what and how, can work from all of those industries. So, I mean, you want to ask the question, why do you need to do transformation? And the why answer in most cases will be answerable to all industries. So you want to improve the customer's quality and experience. You want to improve the employee's experience. You want to transform the way you're working to create shareholder value. And you want to be a disruptor before you are disrupted. So I think all of those reasons, I would say every industry is different in terms of some of the reasons, but the main fundamentals all remain the same. And if the ones that have actually gone through their transformation prior to COVID-19, hopefully are in a more stronger, sustainable position than the ones that haven't started. And I think probably just one final point I would add on that is when I've been doing the transformations, the first few months of doing a transformation has been painstakingly getting buy-in and support from the executive teams, the functional leads and the employees saying, well, why do you need to do this to me? Why are you doing this to me? And obviously, as I've learned through my transformations, you do it in a very different way. But the thing is now, it's rather than why are we doing it, is how quickly can we do it? I think people have realised now if they'd gone through the transformation, they would have been more adaptable in COVID-19.
Thank you, Louise. And Mark, I guess all of us who've worked in the technology industry for some time is used to thinking about disaster recovery policies, but that whole space has been completely redefined. I was reading an article yesterday about the end of the office and what it means, and also application availability has been redefined. So what do you think the impact has been on business process? How do you think that's changing in this new world?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think, it's been said probably many times, if we look back 5 years, 10 years, would we all be in the position we are now? Would businesses still be able to contain and maintain their continuity? Probably not. I think, the advent of the cloud technologies and the collaboration technologies, Zoom and Teams and Skype and a whole raft of technologies that allow people to be able to work and collaborate, not only just from an office, which has always been that traditional kind of method, but also being able to work from home and still access key applications, all of their kind of processes that they need to do their job and communicate and talk to their customers is being made possible through the advent of technology over the last kind of 5 years. So I think DR is taking a very different format, and I think for me, and then certainly in the industry I've just been at the moment, high availability of critical applications is fundamental. Being able to scale those applications quickly and also turn them need be. But I think for me, companies now will both look at their physical assets and also their kind of technology assets to work out how do I keep continuation in the event of something as dramatic as COVID, but obviously other natural disasters and other things as well.
Okay, and Louis, staying with a similar theme, but let's apply it to your experience as a non-exec in a challenger bank, looking at how you maintain disaster recovery, how you look at that application availability. How has it changed in a challenger bank versus a traditional, and how has it changed in a challenger bank during COVID-19?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question, and it's something that I'm quite excited about. I mean, obviously, spent some of my career transformation in a legacy bank versus a challenger bank, and one of the things that I struggle with in a legacy bank is the difficulty in terms of a transformation because there's so many complex, non-integrated applications. And the agility to actually transform is very slow, it's bureaucratic, it's costly, any change just takes such a long time. Whereas a challenger bank is fresh, it's a green sheet of paper, and they've built on a digital system that's fully end to end, and it follows the customer journey on one system with microservices if they need to be a bit different. So I think in the COVID-19, how quickly can legacy banks respond to the government in terms of the small business loans versus the challenger bank? And I think that is proven of a disruptor will disrupt yourself or be disrupted. And if you haven't transformed quick enough, like some of the legacy banks haven't, then they will be struggling against some of the disruptors, and some of these disruptor challenger banks will be perhaps taking a bigger market share, in my view, because they are able to respond much quicker than the legacy banks.
That's interesting. So what you're saying, Louise, is basically their architecture is cloud native by design. It's agile. It's easier to build and change, and therefore to respond during these different requirements in the market. Makes it easier for them to do. Is that right?
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Got it. Thank you. Let's move to look at best practice. So, Mark, CIOs normally have to make investment decisions over a period of perhaps a year, and they'll do that carefully and thought through. At the moment, they've got to do short-term decisions, pacey. But how do you do that with still having the same levels of due diligence and control?
Yeah, and yeah, good question. I think actually most CIOs look at it over 3 years as opposed to a year. I think with a yearly kind of reignition of it all. I think from my perspective, due diligence is still critical. I think it goes back to Louise's point before about what's the purpose of your transformation. You know, most of the projects in fact, all of the projects I've been involved in have had a very clear purpose, and therefore the technology decisions have obviously reinforced that purpose. So from the outset, most CIOs have a good target of solutions, whether it be in sales, supply chain, marketing, whatever it happens to be. They have a good idea, and there's enough great products out there that effectively it shortens your due diligence dramatically. And the critical thing for me is, and I think the game changer for me with cloud is certainly with the software as a service type products. You as a business can go and pretty much, not necessarily 100%, but you can pretty much go out there and purchase an off-the-shelf SaaS product, which has been trialed with many thousands of customers. It comes within the inbuilt processes. It comes in with, all of the benefits, they scream it at you when you obviously purchase the product. So effectively, your due diligence may not be actually with the product, but maybe with a customer or, someone who you can talk to say, look, this is what I'm trying to do. This is my purpose. This is my intent. Has that product achieved that for you? So I think, creatively, I think the great thing with software as a service type products is all of that due diligence is kind of done for you, because effectively you're subscribing to it. So the question for you is, rather than, is it right for me? It's kind of like, is the subscription I'm going to buy, will it do what I need it to do as part of this department that I'm trying to apply it to?
Okay, and staying on the similar theme, Louise, you're advising IT directors all the time. They want to conserve cash at the moment. Cash is king, as we all know, through recession. They want to invest wisely, but they've also got to deliver change and agility. How do you reconcile all of that?
My background previously to doing transformation was a CFO. So I can hear and completely understand what the CFOs are saying in terms of decision making around capital prioritization. So I've always built that into my toolbox of transformation. And I would say there's 3 stages of transformation that I put in my toolbox, which I've always found useful and tends to work. The first phase is around exec sponsorship and ownership. It's got to be owned by the business, not by technology.
100% agree.
The second phase is mapping of the processes, because a transformation is not always about technology, and it shouldn't always be technology led. So I go through that process of identifying all the processes in the organization, and I put them into what I call the 9-box grid. So it's all your customer facing processes, all your asset and supply processes, and all your shared service processes. And then the next phase of it is identifying the pain points. After you've mapped all the processes, get the employees who run those processes to be involved in the process mapping workshops and get the pain points. And then I convert those pain points into business cases and solutions. Once you've got those business cases and solutions, you can split them into 2 halves. There's the quick wins, and then there's the more technical portfolio type things. And the quick wins is where it comes into the investment, because if you do quick wins, they should give you savings relatively quickly within a short period of time. And they will give you cash to then reinvest in the more strategic technology solutions that most people don't have the money for. So in terms of doing this in a way that you can preserve cash, you're not draining the cash, but you're also prioritizing the way you do your delivery of your transformation. Do the ones that give you the cash first, and then reinvest those second ones in the more technology, cloud-based, SaaS-based, integrated platforms, which cost more money and take more time.
And Louise, what you've described there sounds like a typical consultancy engagement in terms of getting the advice of the stakeholders, engaging people, going through a process. But some of these companies at the moment, they're going, look, I'm not got any cash in 6 to 12 months' time. We have to change now and deliver that IT application transformation now. How can they circumvent that process and deliver our agility today?
Well, I think this is absolutely, for some industries. I know for Mark's industry, it's a growing industry and it's a very busy industry during COVID-19. But some other industries have been resisting the transformation because it's getting off the hamster wheel of normal course of business, and you're using the same people. In this downtime, it would be a perfect opportunity for the business to engage with its process owners and the users and the people that run the processes, and do process mapping in this downtime. Because when they do that process mapping in the downtime, the employees will be begging for changes to their processes and automation of their processes. And the perfect opportunity is identifying the RPA opportunities. So identify the opportunities that can be robotic process automation using technology such as Tricentis, etc. That would automate the processes and free up cash, and you can do that within weeks. We mapped in my last transformation 350 processes across the whole organization in 8 weeks, identified 350 pain points and converted those pain points into quick wins that you can deliver within 3 months to free up cash. So RPA is a great, if you can do one thing in this downtime, is map your processes, get people engaged, and identify the quick win opportunities like RPA that you can get on with really, really quickly. That would save and free up resources for more strategic things.
I would also say, Andrew, if I can add to that, I think, you know, and coming from a kind of a technology guy, technology might not be the answer. Yeah, I think a lot of the time companies, you know, can take this time, as Louise said, to look at the processes they've currently got. You know, there's no one better than the process owners to understand where their frustration's on. So there's 2 things I would say to it. Is one, you can bring in an expert, bring in someone independent, because as much as you can listen and you can work with the process owner, you're naturally biased to what you want to hear, selective hearing. If you bring someone in to act as that facilitator, that arbitrator, to try and get efficiencies from your processes, you may not need to spend any money on technology. You're going to get savings potentially straight away from that. If it does free up cash and you do need to, you know, and you have got the ability to spend that cash on technology, then fine. You know, that's kind of for me the next stage. But I think for me personally, technology is not always the answer to things, and I think we've got to get out of this, you know, hamster wheel of buying more and more technology, which is going to make things better and better and better. Actually, the reality of it is simplification is critical, and making sure that people who are running the processes make them as efficient as possible. And if you can bring in technology to make it robotic and take them away from a manual perspective, even better.
Great. So I think the summary of what, let me wrap this session because we're going to move on. The summary of what I think you're saying is you've got to engage with business stakeholders. You've got to be very clear in getting how you can improve those processes at the business level. And then if tech maps to that in an efficient way, then that's good news for the company. But of course, in this period, we've got to do it at a much faster pace than in the past. Let's move to looking at the opportunity. So the opportunity, Mark, and thinking specifically about public cloud at the moment, we've seen this heavy pivot that's gone on to public cloud. Now, normally when people invest this way, they think about where's data going to be located, what to do about security, what to do about cost. I've been talking to one particular bank that 6 years ago, they had I want to be cloud first in my strategy. And then now they've got 5% of their applications have got onto the public cloud. But now we're seeing this heavy pivot. How do companies do that, but still make sure they've done the appropriate checks and balances around those things like data location, security, cost, etc.?
Yeah, I think so. 2 points on this. I think I've worked with businesses and done big transformations where cloud just simply, the board will not tolerate a cloud-based solution. Simple as. They've got concerns, as you mentioned, over data security, whatever it may be. And you can't force a company to do something they don't want to do, especially if they don't see the benefits. The flip side to that is you've got obviously large companies who have got a mixture, kind of a heritage of on-prem solutions, some cloud solutions, some software as a service solutions, and I think obviously and that's probably the case for a lot of large companies. That's probably the reality of it, and I think the for me, cloud has obviously matured massively over the last number of years. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of mistrust around cloud, around obviously data and security and all that kind of good stuff. I think the other big mistake, which a lot of companies I think they do, is try to replicate their on-prem, services and servers and storage into the cloud. My advice would be, if you're going to go down the cloud route and fast, use the expertise provided by these suppliers. No one better than they to kind of give you that assurance. And of course, concerns around data security, around availability, around all of that kind of good stuff. I think if you go to a reputable cloud provider, a lot of those concerns have now been addressed or can be addressed. Obviously, there's always a technology solution to a number of things, and you can obviously increase and tune up the where you feel there's concerns. I think for me, though, the big concern around cloud is the interoperability of all of these cloud solutions being able, and all these solutions we now have, how they interlocked between each other. And I think for me, a lot of the kind of next generation of cloud is how are we going to make sure that these solutions tie together and work kind of seamlessly.
Thank you, Mark. And Louise, you've had experience at some older, more traditional companies and now at Challenger Bank. What does agile cloud delivery mean to you?
One of the things I was just going to take a little step back on is when we were identify the business cases, and Mark quite rightly said it's not always a technology solution. You've got a process, you've got technology, but there's a third one, which is policy. And one of the old banks that I worked in when I was doing a transformation program resisted the transformation move into the cloud because they said their policy didn't align to a cloud first policy. So a simple thing is people don't think about, well, the world has moved on. Very much in a long time ago, cloud wasn't well known and recognized, and it wasn't perceived by many banks as being secure. But the world has moved on, and cloud is very secure, and perhaps more secure than carrying around a load of documentations of paper in a bank. So I think people need to think about, changing their policies first, and changing the policy to a cloud policy acceptable. So that was in a legacy bank, and that just gives you an example of that's how difficult it is to move to the cloud, because the fundamental thing is they don't have a cloud policy that's acceptable in the organization. So perhaps you need to look at some of your policies as the world, as technology changes. But as I was saying earlier, moving into a contender bank, cloud first is the strategy. That is the digital technology, and that enables change to happen faster and transformation to happen faster. But for a cloud policy, you need a cloud strategy. This is more for the legacy organizations. And for a cloud strategy, you need to have an IT strategy around what you're going to do with all your applications. Because as Mark said, most legacy organizations have hundreds, and maybe not thousands, but hundreds of thousands of applications in some cases. And they need a roadmap of every single one of those applications, whether it's going to be bin, reinvigorate, and keep forever and move to the cloud. So you need to start with that, and then move to the roadmap of how you decommission those applications, because otherwise you're going to have a few things in the cloud and a few things not in the cloud, and you're not going to have the seamless, fully integrated systems that these contender banks have. They have one seamless, fully integrated system. So the legacy organizations need to go on that journey.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to your questions. So let's have a look at what viewer questions we have here. So Mark, first one for you. I've had bad experiences of outsourcing in the past, and I'm concerned that if I heavily pivot to the cloud, I'm moving to another outsourcing model and getting locked in. What would the team recommend I do?
Yeah, 25 years in the industry, I fully sympathize. Yeah, good question. I think ultimately, depending on the scale of your organization, I think, that, yeah, it's a good question. I think ultimately it comes down to what you're trying to achieve. Be very clear with the outsourcer or outsourcers that what your purpose is, what it is you're trying to achieve, and again going after best of breed for what you can afford. Now, naturally, there's no getting away from the fact that due diligence helps you in the beginning, but I think obviously a regular governance in place once you've got the relationship is critical. And I do think as well, treating an outsourcer as a partner, the whole them and us has got to change. We've got to be a bit more mature than this. We've got to move into the partnership realm. And I think companies who do that and treat partners on an equal footing, I think, and I've seen this myself. I've done this myself with a number of outsourcers have become partners to firms, and it's worked out really well, and the results have worked, and the outcomes have been achieved.
Okay, and Louise, one for you here. I work in a mid-sized organisation and haven't prioritised high enough digital transformation in the past. I now feel under pressure. How do I deliver it quickly?
Excellent question, and this is what I was suggesting, that people like myself who advise on transformation are very, sounds awful, but very excited about the transformation that this is bringing us now, because people want to go faster with transformation. So I should say there was 3 quick steps. I think I outlined them just a moment ago, but number 1 is map all of your processes across the whole organization: customer journey, asset and supply, and back office. But don't do that unless you've got process leads appointed for each of the processes, and have the people that run those processes in those process mapping. So every process is mapped. Whilst you're mapping those processes, collate the data. So collate data around the cost of a process, the KPIs of a process, and also identify the pain points. One of the last CEO that I worked for in a transformation actually said to me, "You're like a doctor to me. You're going to come in and you are going to understand the symptoms. The patients are going to be the employees. They're going to come to you and tell you all their problems. And then you're going to give me a prescription at the end of it, how you're going to solve them," and exactly how it felt. Some of the employees at the end were almost crying with relief that they could actually pour down their problems. They've been running these processes for so long. Nobody's listened to them. This is their opportunity. But the good thing is, once you've got their pain points, you definitely need to show that you're delivering their solutions to solve those pain points. So I think number 1, get buy-in, map all the processes, identify the pain points, convert those pain points into business cases. And I think there's, as we said earlier, there's business cases that relate to process improvement, policy changes, and then technology. And then split those business cases into quick wins and transformation programs. Get on with the quick wins at a pace as quickly as you can, and free up the money to then prioritize the technology ones. And the technology ones should be underpinned by strategies. There'd be a cloud first strategy, there'd be a data governance strategy, there'd be a digital workplace strategy. So every business case needs to tick that they're aligned to those. So I would say they're the steps that I would go through to get on with them as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you, Louise. And thank you for the many others who have sent us questions. I'm sorry we haven't had time to get to all of them. Let's move to today's takeaway. So my thanks to Louise McCarthy and to Mark Aikman for joining me today. If you were to give one piece of advice to our audience today of what they should do around business process transformation through COVID-19, what would it be? Mark?
For me, have a very clear purpose to avoid any kind of cottage industries springing up within the transformation. Take advantage of off-the-shelf products and resist trying to customize them and deliver them quickly.
Thank you. And Louise, what would be yours?
I think in addition to the things I've already highlighted whilst during your downtime, you need to measure the benefits. And most people focus on just cost saving benefits, which obviously will be very, very important as we come out of COVID-19. But there's a customer satisfaction, There's the employee benefits, and you can use the pain points that you identify as being the employee benefits. And then there's the fourth one, which is the social. So a lot of people forget the carbon emissions and the social benefits of business cases. You've got 4 quadrants. If you measure all of your benefits in those 4 boxes, every business case should align to that.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Mark. And to our viewers, thank you for joining today. You can see more of the Cloud Counsel episodes on Nutanix.com/CXO. That's Nutanix.com/CXO. We'll be back next Thursday at 4 p.m, where we'll be looking at innovation in times of crisis. We'll be joined by Ian Cohen and Herman Singh, the CEO of Future Advisory. Thank you for joining, and see you next time.